Isn't fear a natural part of human existence? Is it possible to become fearless? And if so, how?
So let me address the first question. Is fear a natural part of existence? People have come to believe it is, but that's not the truth. Fear is not a natural part of existence. People have, it's a learned experience. Fear is a learned habit. Let me give you a couple of examples. If you know that if you put your hand in a fire, directly in a fire, and you know your hand is going to get burned, the intelligent thing to do is not to put your hand in the fire. That does not mean that you fear the fire. It just means that you have additional information that tells you you have to be cautious not to put your hand in a burning fire because you know your hand is going to get burned. That's just intelligence. You don't have to be frightened in order to exercise that intelligence. That's one example. Another example I can give you, fear of heights. So I used to have a very strong fear of heights. If you're up very high, let's say you're up on a mountain cliff, and you know that there's a plateau, and if you go to the edge of the plateau, it's a very steep drop, right? So you know that if you're too close to the edge, you risk falling over. So with that information, you can act intelligently. Even if you want to look over the edge, you can act intelligently not to get too close. And that doesn't mean you're frightened of the edge of the plateau. It doesn't mean you're frightened of falling off. It means that you're acting on information and you're being careful. So that's another example. So it's very important for people to understand that where there is intelligence, there can be no fear. Fear is unintelligent. And again, as I said earlier, it's a learned habit that collectively societies now believe that it's a natural part of human experience, but it's not. It's actually unnatural. And then what was the second question?
Is it possible to become fearless? And if so, how?
Hmm. So Sri Krishna in the Bhagavad Gita says of all the divine qualities, fearlessness is the highest. So it's absolutely possible to become fearless. First, you begin with the understanding that fear is an ego expression. Fear is an ego expression. And so if you're stuck in the limitation of your ego and you believe that you're just the body, just the mind, just the senses, and you believe that you're just an individual, you're just a person, you're just small or delightfully weird, if you believe that, fear will be a natural expression that you experience. It's an expression of the limitation of the ego. Once you begin to have the experience that you are God, so how, that is the how. Once you begin to have the direct experience that you are God, that you are the supreme absolute, that you have that as your God nature, the self is your God nature, and Chit Shakti is your God power. When you have that experience to the extent that you become established in it, the fear diminishes and diminishes and diminishes until it begins to dissolve. For this, you need very strong spiritual leadership in a living Siddha Guru. That's why I took my guru, but it's entirely possible. So all of the practices that are focused on making the restless mind quiet, allowing you to then silence your mind, allowing you to dissolve your mind when it's not necessary for you to be thinking in the moment. All of those practices and methods that we teach here, which are very, very effective, lead to the experience of fearlessness. As the mind becomes quiet and dissolves, the ego begins to dissipate. And then with strong spiritual leadership, we have methods and instruction here to allow people to surrender the limitation of the ego entirely. Once the ego goes, you know that you're God. You know that you are that experience of the bliss of the self. Once you know who you are, fearlessness is a very natural and direct experience. And so that's how you do it. And it's very important to remember that this is an innate part of who you are. Being fearless is innate within you. It's just that we all conceal that experience of fearlessness in these learned habits and behaviors that include the restless mind, that include our reaching for the limitation of the ego. And that's how we've bound ourselves up in the prison of fear. And so, absolutely, that can be unraveled. And without question, over time, you can become established in fearlessness. And I know this first from observing my own guru for many, many years. He was an absolutely fearless being, observing other siddhas in our lineage who were absolutely fearless beings, and then employing the instruction and the methods that my guru gave me that over a period of years have absolutely delivered me to the experience of fearlessness. And that fearlessness has been tested, not just by my guru, but also by situations and circumstances, some of which were quite dire. I've had rifles pointed in my face. I've had people threaten me at knife point. I've had situations where I aided people who were being mugged, and then the muggers pulled guns on me, put guns to the side of my head. And so I've had other situations where, for example, I was coming out of a bank that was being robbed. And all of a sudden, police arrived. I was about 50 yards away from the entrance of the bank. I had just left the bank. And the police were shooting at the perpetrators who were coming out of the bank. They were behind me. And the perps were firing back at the police. And I found myself in the middle of a gunfight with bullets flying by me left and right. And I fell to the ground laughing. I was laughing because in that experience of being caught in the middle of gunfire, I heard the mantra that my guru gave me welling up inside me. It was like people were chanting this mantra. It was an entire chorus chanting this mantra, Om Namah Shivaya, inside me. And I began to laugh hysterically. I fell on the cement street, my face to the concrete, laughing hysterically. Police officer got into a cruiser and backed up to me and opened the back door, and he was yelling at me, get in, get in. And I was laughing. I couldn't even hear him. And he was yelling, what are you, crazy? Are you stupid? Get into the rear of the cruiser now, or otherwise you're going to be shot. And there I was, rolling in joy. And I was fine. I didn't get shot. I'm still here. So it's entirely possible. I just share a little bit of my experience so that viewers can understand that I know this experience well, the experience of fearlessness. And if I can become established in fearlessness, anyone can, with the right methods and with strong spiritual leadership.